Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. For today's groovy crochet tutorial, we're making a fun off-the-shoulder top using a wave stitch, which to me is just as eye-catching as a chevron, but gives more of a friendly vibe. Speaking of, by now y'all already know the drill, but just in case you're new here, the friendliest modern crochet tutorials and patterns are here live, with even more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on the show, so without further ado, for this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 370 grams of yarn. That's 730 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 6mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you prefer crayons or colored pencils. I really enjoy the experience of crayons, but I prefer pencils for more precision. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows: chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 6mm hook. Then we're all going to make a chain that is in multiples of 15, the width of the widest part around our bust. And I needed about 34 inches or 86 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 90. And since this is going to be a long chain, I'm going to show you how to make a long chain without a twisting. So we're all going to start by making a chain 5. Once we all have our chain 5, we're all going to pull some slack and pull our hook out. We're going to insert our hook into that first chain that we made, then insert our slack loop back over our chain, then continue chaining per usual. And I actually already have this portion of my piece already completed, so I'm just going to do a small sample size. Now once we have our chain, we're going to pull our first loop underneath our second, and that should form a chain. Now that we have this completed, we're all going to chain 2. And working into the chain, we're going to start working on our stitches. Now we're all going to start with 1 half double crochet into that first chain. That first chain is going to be the one that we used to connect the beginning to the end of the row. So yarn over, insert with 1 half double crochet. Then we're all going to do a decrease of 2 half doubles. So yarn over, into that next stitch, pull through, also into that next, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4, then 1 half double crochet again. Now since this is going to be more of a wave detail, we're starting off with the first half of one of the waves. Now we're going to do a full wave. Now just for video's sake, I'm going to show you how to do one full wave. So that's the increase and the decrease portions on a flat sample size, just to make it easier to show. But remember, we are going to be working into our chains that is connected in the rounds. So what we're all going to do from here is an increase of 2 half doubles, then into that next 1 half double until we're worked into a total of 6 chains. So into that next chain, we're going to insert with 1, same chain with a second, into that next chain with 1 half double, and like I said, we're going to continue on with our increase and then 1 half double until we're worked into a total of 6 stitches. So here's 1, here's 2, into that next, which is an increase, with our third, next with just 1 half double, which is our fourth, into that next, into our 5th, which is yet another increase, then into that next, which is our 6th, with just 1 half double crochet. Now like I said, this first row will be worked in the rounds, but I'm just doing it flat just to show you guys what the stitches are looking like so far. But so far we should have 1 half a decrease and 1 full increase section. Now we're going to work on 1 full decrease section. So right after that last stitch, we're now going to do a decrease of 2 half double crochets and then 1 half double crochet into the following. We're going to repeat those 2 stitches until we have a total of 6 stitches made. So let's do that together. So yarn over, into that next chain, insert, pull through, next chain, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4. That gives us our first stitch. For the decrease portion, we're not going to be counting the stitches that were worked into, but more so the stitches that we made. So there's 1. Like I said, we need to make a total of 6. So into that next, we're going to insert with just 1 half double crochet. So far for this decrease portion, we should have 2 stitches. We're going to continue these 2 stitches till we have a total of 6 stitches made. So like I said, 1, 2, into that next with a decrease for our third, then into the next with just 1 half double with our fourth, and then into that next with a decrease for our fifth, then into that next with just 1 half double for our 6th stitch. So far, we all should have completed 1 half of our decrease portion, a full increase portion, and then a full decrease portion, giving us a total of 18 stitches. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our previous 15 stitches, because remember the first 3 stitches was just 1 half of our decrease portion, until we reach the end of the row. Now, since we started with just a half of a decrease portion, we will be ending with just half of a decrease portion as well. And like I said, this first row is worked in the rounds. So I'm just going to continue on with the rest of my row. And then I will meet you guys back to show you how we're going to close out the row and get started on the following row. So we've made our way all the way around with our row 1. Now we're going to close off the row by slip stitching into that second chain that we made when we started off the row. Now we do want to make sure that our chain isn't twisted so that this lays nice and flat once when it's completed. So once when it is flat, we're going to count up 1, count up 2. Into that second chain, we're going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. Now that slip stitch will look like an additional stitch, but it will not count as a stitch. That's just there to connect. And also, we should have the same amount of stitches as chains that we made since we didn't do any additional increases or decreases. Now, the rest of the rows from this portion is just going to be a repeat of our previous row, all within the back loops. So from here, we're going to chain 2. We want to make sure that we're flipping our work and repeat within the back loops. So let's do the next 18 stitches together. So we're going to start by finding that first stitch from our previous row, making sure we're not working into that slip stitch. We're going to insert into that back loop with 1 half double, then a decrease of 2 half doubles, then 1 half double into the next. We all should have just made 3 stitches, and that is 1 half of our decrease portion. Now we're going to do the increase portion, and we're going to be working into the next 6 back loops, alternating between an increase and just 1 half double. So into that next stitch, insert into that back loop with 1 increase of 2 half doubles. Into that next with just 1, we're worked into the next 2 stitches, so into that third with an increase, into the fourth with just 1, into the fifth with an increase, and into the 6th with just 1 again. And now the increase portion is complete. Now we're going to do the decrease portion. So that's going to start with a decrease of 2 back loop halves, then 1 back loop half into the next, and we're going to make a total of 6 stitches. So yarn over, into that next stitch, pull through, next stitch is back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4. That makes our first stitch. Then into the next with just 1 back loop half. Continue repeating these 2 stitches. So again, a decrease of 2 back loop half, giving us 3, into that next with just 1, giving us 4, next 2 stitches with a decrease, giving us 5 stitches, then into the next with just 1 half double, giving us a total of 6 stitches. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 15 previous stitches, making our way all the way around. So exactly the same way that we did the previous row. Then I'll meet you back at the end of the row. So we are back and we have just completed our row 2. We have slip stitched into that second chain that we made when we got started on the row. We should still have the same amount of stitches as our previous row. Then from here, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, and repeat this row. We're going to continue to repeat this row with no additional increases or decreases until we now have a portion that reaches 1 inch underneath our underarm. So as a sizing tip, make sure that we're placing our base chain at our waist because that's going to be where our waistband is going to be. Then continue this, making our way up until we reach 1 inch underneath our underarm. Then I'll meet you back. So we are back. I've just completed the height of my body portion. Now I have a total of 20 rows. This height is just about 8 inches or 20 centimeters. Now from here we can get started on the sleeve prep. So right after that last row, we all should have done a chain up of 1 and cut. Then we're going to need to insert our stitch markers where our arms are going to be. So we're going to start by inserting our stitch markers into the middle stitches that we have. Now, for those of you that have an even number like me, what we're going to do is insert our stitch marker into the 2 stitches that we have on both sides of our tail end. Then we're going to find our 2 middle stitches. So for those of you that have my numbers, I made a total chain of 90. Since we didn't do any additional increases or decreases, our last row should be the same amount of stitches as chains that we made. So I should have 2 middle stitches since mine was an even number. So counting from one of my stitch markers that's nearest to my tail end, I inserted my stitch markers into the 45th and 46th stitch. We should have the same amount of stitches on both sides of our stitch markers. Now, for those of you that have ended on an odd number, what you guys are going to do, similar idea, but not exactly the same. You're going to insert your stitch marker into one of your stitches that's nearest to your tail end. You don't need to insert it into both. Then find your 1 middle stitch and then insert your stitch marker into there. For those of you that had an odd number, you should have just 1 middle stitch. Then we're going to try our piece on and frame off our arms, making sure that we're placing our middle stitch markers right at mid underarm. We're then going to insert our stitch marker into any even numbered stitch that frames our arm. So framing off our arms is going to be pretty simple. We're all going to make sure that our middle stitch or stitches, depending on how many stitch markers you have, is directly at mid underarm, so right underneath our arms. Then what we're going to do is simply insert our stitch marker into any even numbered stitch that is including our middle stitch marker stitch that's nearest to the corner of our underarm within the front and also within the back. So I've inserted my stitch marker into the 6th stitch from my stitch marker. Remember, that is including that stitch marker stitch on both sides. For those of you that have just 1 stitch marker, go ahead and continue to count that 1 middle stitch. Then once we have that, we're going to repeat it on the other side. We do need to make sure that we have the same amount of stitches on both sides. Then since our piece is on, we're actually going to do 2 more things from this point. From our arm framing stitch marker stitches, all we're going to do is make an odd number chain that can wrap around our arm to reach the other stitch marker stitch. Now for those of you that have my numbers, I actually measured mine out already. I needed roughly 6 inches or 15 centimeters. So I made a chain of 25 and that can wrap from stitch marker around my arm to my other stitch marker. But that chain that we just made isn't going to be used for the actual piece. That's just to know how many rows we need to do when we're doing the width of our sleeve. So go ahead and just test out this chain since our piece is already on. We don't want to keep trying it on and off. And then once we have that chain, remember that number once we get to that portion of our sleeve. Then we're all going to make a chain that is still in multiples of 15, the length that we like for our sleeve to be. Now this could be longer, this could be shorter. I'd like for my sleeve to be just about 9 inches or 22 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain 45. So just insert your stitch marker into your middle stitch marker stitch. If you have 2 stitch markers, pick one. If you have just one, insert it into that one. Then go ahead and make your chain, remembering that this chain does still need to be in multiples of 15. Now, once we have our chain, we're all going to do the same exact wave stitch that we did when we got started on the piece. So from here, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, then we're going to start with the first half of the decrease portion, then just continue to do our wave stitch until we don't have any more chains left to work into. Then I'll meet you back. So we are back. We made our way all the way down with our first wave row. Now from here, we're going to connect it into the base. So this is going to be the same for everyone, no matter if we have 2 middle stitches or just 1. We're all going to start by slip stitching it into the same stitch that our chain one is in, so our stitch marker stitch. So just to make sure that we're not missing out on this row, we're going to insert in through there with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, we're going to slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, still does not count as a stitch. Flip our work. Then we're going to do our same exact wave stitch, making our way all the way down within the back loop so that it can match the ribbing that we have for the body. So continue doing this, making our way all the way down. At the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, do our wave stitch all the way back up, then I will meet you back right after a repeat of our row 3 so that we can connect it into the base together once more. And lastly, if you guys need a refresher on how to do the wave stitch, those links will be linked in the description. So we are back. We have just completed our first 3 sleeve rows. Now what we're going to do is connect it into the base together just once more to make sure we all have it down. So just into that next available stitch, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. Remember that the slip stitch into the base does not count as a stitch, so we should all still have the same amount of stitches as chains that we made. Then, just to work our way up to the following row again, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and repeat within the back loops all the way down. We're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows with no additional increases or decreases until we're worked into our following stitch marker stitch. Then I'll meet you guys back so we can get started on the width of our sleeve. So we are back. We have just completed doing our wave stitch rows until we're worked into our following stitch marker stitch. Now we all should have ended along the outer edge. What we're going to do is more wave stitch rows without any additional increases or decreases, but now we're going to be worked off of the body for the same amount of chains that we made while we're still doing the prep for the sleeve. So what we're going to do is chain 2, flip our work, do our same wave stitch, then I'll just meet you back at the end of the row. So we've just made our way down with our first wave stitch row that is not going to be connected to the base. So what we're going to do is simply chain 2, flip, and repeat. We're going to continue to repeat this row with no additional increases or decreases until we now have the same amount of rows as prep chains that we made. So for me, that's going to be 25. And that chain amount is not going to count the first few rows that we did as well, just counting from this first row that's not connected into the base. Once we have that total amount of rows completed, I'll meet you guys back so that we can connect it to the other side of our body and then we can finish up our sleeve together. So we are back. We have just completed the total width of my sleeve. Now we're going to connect it to the other stitch marker stitch that we have and then finish this up. We're all going to start by making sure that everything is flipped right side up, right side out. Then we're going to fold our sleeve in half, making sure that nothing's twisted. Then just into our following stitch marker stitch, we're going to slip stitch into there and then work our way back out with our wave stitch. So all we're going to do into that stitch marker stitch, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. Remember that the slip stitch into the base doesn't actually count as a stitch. Flip our work, then do our exact same wave stitch, making our way all the way down. Then from here, we should chain 2, flip our work, make our way back, connecting it into the base that we did for the beginning of our sleeve. Once we're worked into our stitch marker stitch, now this counts if you guys have 2 middle stitches like me or if you just have 1. Once we're worked into our stitch marker stitch, I'll meet you guys back so we can seam it all up together. So we are back. We have just made our way all the way down, working into our stitch marker stitch with our wave stitches. Now we're going to seam it up together. Now this seam is going to be fairly simple. It's going to be a single crochet seam. What we're all going to do is start by making sure that our work is flipped wrong side out. Then to do our single crochet seam, we're all going to insert our hook into the first stitch, into the front and the back panel, then pull our working yarn through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Then single crochet into both the front and back panel at the same time. So finding that first stitch into the front panel, insert, first stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet. Pretty simple. Again, find that next stitch into the front, next stitch into the back, and single. And we're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way down. When we don't have any more stitches left, I'll meet you back so we can get started on the cuff. So our sleeve is all seamed up. Now we should have all ended along the outer edge. Now what we're going to do from here is a single crochet row to get started on the cuff. So what we're going to do from here is chain 1. The chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch. That's just for the height. Then we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side row. So finding our first side row right here, I'm going to find that top loop and insert with just 1 single crochet. This is my following side row, insert with 1. And that's pretty much it. We're going to continue with 1 single crochet into every side row, making our way all the way around. Then I will meet you back. So we have made our way all the way around with our single crochet row. We have slip stitched into that chain space. Now we're going to get started on the length of our cuff. Now I'd like for my cuff to be roughly 3 inches or 5 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain 15. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to do a slip stitch row. So start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now that chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch. That's our turning chain. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're all going to insert with a slip stitch. So we're going to insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything on our hook. Now we want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into, but let's do that again. Into that next chain, yarn over, and pull through everything. Continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. We are back and we've just completed our first row. Now we're going to connect it back into the base. So the same way that we connected our sleeve into the base, we're going to start by finding that next available stitch. Insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base, flip our work, and now we're going to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So into that first available stitch from our previous row, not worked into any of those slip stitches into the base, we're going to insert in through that back loop, yarn over, and gently pull through everything. Again, next stitch is back loop, yarn over, and still gently pull through everything, and that's it. From here, we're going to continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, 1 back loop slip into every stitch again, then I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. Now that we have made our way back with our first 3 rows, now we're going to slip stitch it into the base just as a refresher. So into that next available stitch, we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. That slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and then again put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. From here, we're going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows, making our way all the way around. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I'll meet you back so we can seam it all up together. Alright, so we are back. We have made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. Now from here, we're going to seam it all up. Now this seam is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam to make it look like another back loop slip stitch row. So we're going to make sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to insert our hook into that first available stitch's front loop. So into that first available stitch into the front panel, we're going to insert only in through that front loop. Then finding that next available stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us, then yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. Into that following stitch, again, into that next stitch's front loop only, into that next stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop only, yarn over and pull through everything. Now we're going to continue doing this till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up a 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. So we are back and we are now ready to get started on the top band. So we're going to start with a single crochet row that's going to be fairly simple. We're going to start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then what we're going to do is simply put 1 single crochet into every stitch, then 1 single crochet into every side row, working our way across the sleeves. So just start by inserting your hook into any stitch and make your way all the way around. Really quickly, the single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So if you try it on and it's a little bit too tight, redo some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, redo some stitches with a tighter grip, but I'll meet you back once when the single crochet row is completed. So we are back. Our single crochet row is complete. Now from here, we're all going to get started on our double crochet band. So start by making a chain right after we slip stitch into that chain space, making a chain the length that we like for the band to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 2.5 inches or 7 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain 12. So now that we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 3. That chain 3 doesn't count as a stitch. That's our turning chain. Then from here, yarning over and inserting into the 4th chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a double crochet. So insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Again, yarn over, into that next chain, pull through 2, and continue with 1 double crochet into every chain. We made our way down with our first row. Now we're going to connect it into the base. So connecting it into the base, we're all going to start by counting up the next 2 available stitches. So there's 1, there's 2. Into that second stitch, we're all going to insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch, that is just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch up the following 2 stitches into the base. So there is my first, there's my second. Now those slip stitches don't count as a stitch either, that's just to work our way up to the following row. Now we're going to flip our work. Now from here, 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch. So yarn over, into the last stitch from our previous row, not worked into any of those slip stitches into the base. We're going to insert with a back loop double crochet. Then from here, continue with 1 back loop double crochet into the rest of our stitches. Then at the end of the row, chain 3, flip our work, put 1 back loop double into every stitch, then I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. We are back. We have just completed our first 3 rows. Now we're going to connect it back into the base the same way that we did. Then we're going to continue. So counting the next 2 available stitches, there's 1, there's 2. slip stitch into that second stitch into the base just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch up the 2 following stitches. There's one, there's our second. None of those slip stitches into the base actually count as a stitch. We're going to flip our work and put 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch. What we're going to do from here, continue to repeat these 2 rows with no increases, no decreases, making our way all the way around. While we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I'll meet you back. So we are back. We've made our way all the way around with our back loop double crochet band. Now from here, we're going to seam it up. This is going to be the same seam as our sleeve. So just to talk you guys through it, we're going to make sure the work is flipped wrong side out, then do our same exact single crochet seam. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then we can complete the piece with our bottom band. So getting started on the bottom band, what we're going to do is make sure that our work is flipped right side out now. Insert your hook into any one of the stitches along the bottom of our piece, and just like how we did for the top band, we're going to do a single crochet row, making our way all the way around. So just put 1 single crochet into every stitch, then I'll meet you back. But as a quick tip, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. When it's completed, try your piece on. If it's a little too tight, reduce some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, reduce some stitches with a tighter grip. Then I'll meet you back. So we are back. We have made our way all the way around with our single crochet row. Now what we're going to do from here is the bottom band. So all we're going to do is just make a chain, the length that we'd like for the bottom band to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to make a chain 10. Then I'm going to do the same exact back loop slip stitch rows that we did for the cuff. So back loop slip stitch rows, no increases, no decreases, making our way all the way around. Then I'll meet you back so we can seam it all together. So we are back. We have just made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch bottom band. We are all done. We do need to seam it still, so what we're going to do is the same outside loop slip stitch seam that we did for the cuff. So just making sure that our work is flipped right side out still. We're going to do our same outside loop slip stitch seam. Then when we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then we're all done. Then the last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it, y'all. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye.